In this video, we're going to be diving into a story of true resilience. Honestly, absolutely true resilience. In 2023, a small plane went down in the vast inhabitable Amazon rainforest. The plane was carrying 3 adults and 4 children. Now, the ages of the children are going to blow your mind. That crashed out the Colombian Special Forces and a group of indigenous people who went to carry out this huge, crazy search operation. The things that happened throughout this operation are flipping mind-blowing and left me speechless at the very end of this documentary while I was watching it. That's a video we're going to be talking about today. True resilience. So let's get amongst it.
Una selva que no tiene fin. Usted siente el poder que tiene la naturaleza.
Ahora se encuentra una aeronave desaparecida.
A bordo están 4 niños indígenas y su madre.
Y yo me asusté.
Una selva espesa, una selva inhóspita.
Inmediatamente se activaron todas las órdenes.
Es como buscar una aguja en un pajar.
Yo como padre me sentía bastante impotente.
Encontramos la avioneta.
Y no identificamos de pronto cuerpos pequeños.
Uy, ¿cómo así, man? Los niños no están.
Hoy se unieron al equipo de rescate 85 indígenas.
Entonces nosotros, pues como siempre, nos menosprecian nuestro conocimiento. Entonces.
Muchos de estos voluntarios indígenas desconfían del ejército.
Ellos se preparan para el tema de la guerra. Pero ellos nunca estuvo preparado para esta misión.
Todo territorio tiene sus guardianes, los seres que lo cuidan.
¿Por qué no encontramos los niños en la selva? Están enojados. Ahí sucedieron cosas que pues todavía no tengo ni respuesta.
Teníamos que cambiar la estrategia.
Desde hace varios días no hay pruebas de que los niños estén vivos.
Hermano, tenga fe.
Familias enteras colombianas están pendientes de esa noticia.
Vamos a rescatar a nuestros 4 menores.
La familia me preguntó, general, ¿y hasta cuándo van a parar? Yo le dije, hasta que los encontremos.
This documentary is called The Lost Children. It happened back in 2023 was whenever this whole sort of scenario happened. You may be already aware of it. You may have already seen the documentary on Netflix, or you may indeed have seen snippets of it on mainstream media back in the time, because it did end up going viral internationally. The specifics are, I'm going to break really down short for anyone who hasn't seen it. However, I highly recommend you go and watch it after sort of viewing this sort of video. The people on board them, you had 3 adults, 2 males and 1 female. The female was a mother and her 4 children. This is the crazy part. Her children were the ages of 13, so a 13-year-old girl, she was the eldest, a 9-year-old girl, a 4-year-old boy and an 11-month-year-old baby girl. They were the sort of children that were involved in this. Happened back in 2023, so not too distant ago, only a couple of years ago. And it sort of, the normality of it happening, I say normality of a plane going down, it's not very normal, but you would go to expect when a plane goes down, all the instruments on board send the emergency signal back and all the rest of it. That happened, which then sort of G'd up a rescue operation, which the rescue operation was dubbed Operation Hope. Now, with the traction on mainstream media, that then got the attention of the sort of Colombian government, who are already involved with the normal sort of rescue protocols, but they then aligned to it Colombian Special Forces, which then got aligned to, I think it's a Major General, I want to say, equivalent to the British Army. I don't know the equivalents of the ranks, but this guy's in charge of the Colombian Special Forces. He's got the call from his bosses to align his troops to it. They then get involved. With them, they bring all the sort of kit and equipment that you would expect to be available to any sort of modern day military, never mind just the special forces. They have Black Hawk helicopters to transport them into the jungle. They had all the normal sort of gear you would expect to have by operating in the jungle, and quite clearly they are Colombians, so they're used to that area. It's not like, grabbing me and dropping me into the jungle where I have little to no experience in there. So these people are experienced within it. All the kit and equipment they have, they've got night vision, So your normal nods on the person. They've got all this sort of communication equipment to stay in comms with each other. How they go about the operation, they do like a systematical planning, how you go to expect any sort of military or any organisation would go about searching for people. And then you had the indigenous people were there as well. They were a smaller group and they had very basic equipment, their own sort of food, living off the land as such. They had Wellington boots, machetes to cut through the sort of the vastness of the jungle. And to anyone who's watching this who's military or indeed a veteran, you've done time in the jungle, predominantly here in the UK, we would spend time in the Brunei jungle, JWEC, so Jungle Warfare Instructors Course, or you've been in exercise, you will know that, what that environment entails. But for anyone who's maybe not as much as aware of what the jungle entails, I'm going to play you a small clip here from a guy called Graham Hancock, which is a very well-known studier, researcher. He has a lot of work to back him. He's very scientific and very factual. He does a lot of stuff on sort of ancient civilizations, which we will come on to deeper on the video, but I'm just going to play a small clip of him just sort of trying to, in a few words, explain just the vastness of what the jungle entails. So here we go.
The Amazon basin is huge. The Amazon basin is 7 million square kilometers in area. And within it, 5.5 million square kilometers remains almost entirely unstudied by archaeologists. And that's the 5.5 million square kilometers that is still covered by dense rainforest. And to put that into perspective, 5.5 million square kilometers is the size of the entire Indian subcontinent.
So there we go there. That's just showing you the vast density and what it is. The dangers of the jungle. So not only have they been involved in a plane crash, which is going to bring its own sort of nuances and obstacles, flip me. Anyone who's ever been involved in one, I don't know if you have, I certainly haven't. But then you've got everything. You've got the environment. Believe during the operation it was raining up to 17 hours each day. You've also got all the animals, everything that's in the jungle that's designed to be sort of not so great regards to humans. Now, without going down into the full details of the rescue operation, because I want you to go and see the full documentary for yourself if you've never heard of this, we're going to break down like the stuff that was going on within the jungle itself. Now, the two groupings, so the Colombian Special Forces and indigenous people, weren't necessarily working with each other. They were both in the sort of area, but the Colombian Special Forces, they had their weapons and stuff with them. This was because there's quite a lot of illegal activity happens within the jungle itself. That's to the cocoa plant grows there, so cocaine, that's where it's manufactured. So you have a lot of criminal organizations operating within there, and some terrorists as well. So that's already on top of the Colombian Special Forces mind frames. They were sort of worried about finding the people within the wreckage, but two, then worried in case they came under contact or got involved in a situation against any criminal activity. So they had all this sort of weight on their shoulders. You've got the indigenous people there who live in the land, they're on around the land, they don't necessarily trust the government or anyone who carries a weapon, and that becomes more sort of apparent throughout the documentary when you listen to the series of interviews given throughout that. So you've got them, they're worried about the soldiers, are the soldiers going to turn on them? The soldiers are worried about on indigenous people, are they going to turn on us? So you've got that kind of trust issue at the start, which I'll let that play out as it goes through the documentary itself. So they're going through there. But the big thing then I want to pull away from this is the key sort of things I seen was both parties, so the indigenous people and the special forces, felt like there was something going on in the jungle that they couldn't necessarily explain. It was just forces at work that they just couldn't understand what was going on, but they felt that there was something playing against them that the jungle was doing. I'm going to bring back on Graham Hancock again because he was on the Joe Rogan podcast. Now this isn't anything but conspiracy theories, but I want to bring a little video where he talks about his background is ancient civilizations. This is coming slightly away from the Lost Children documentary, but it is apparent to what I'm talking about within the topic. He goes around the world, throughout the world, and he studies these ancient sites all over the world, and his factual stuff that he brings to light is a lot of these civilizations or areas where we would have thought, previously inhabitable, did in fact have civilizations living there which were thinking and were a lot more potentially advanced than what we perceive them to be. And specifically, when I have to go for it from my own head, watching this documentary and all the stuff that I got brought up in and around school, where, you know, the pyramids, they just happened. These civilizations, the jungle, it never had anyone living in there. But this guy is not a conspiracy theorist. He does have factual evidence, that goes to explain where there has been sort of other factors at work, and people were a lot more advanced than what we have maybe necessarily thought they would have been. So we're just going to bring that video on now, let him talk about it, and I'm going to break that down a bit more after he talks about it.
But what's fascinating about them is this very powerful geometry and astronomy. So a number of the sites are perfectly aligned to true north, true south, true east, and true west. I'm not talking about magnetic north. I'm talking about true astronomical north. To do that, there's only one way to do it, and that's with astronomy. So that tells us that astronomers were at work in the Amazon. The geometry is very complex and very precise. That tells us that people with geometrical skills were at work in the Amazon. And thirdly, the scale of the sites of hundreds of meters, gigantic earthworks on the scale of hundreds of meters, tells us that this was highly organized project that was undertaken on a very large scale by very large numbers of people. It's a wonderful mystery. And what it suggests is a heritage of extremely ancient knowledge. You don't wake up one morning and, you know, create a perfectly geometrical square or circular earthwork that's perfectly aligned to true north, south, east, and west on an enormous scale. There has to be a background to that. There has to be a reason for doing it. And the evidence is none of these sites were lived in. There's no habitation refuse found in them whatsoever. We don't know what they were used for. I make the case in America before that they're connected to a system of ideas which is found all around the world, which is to do with death and the afterlife destiny of the soul.
So there we go. That's him breaking that down. This guy is very, very scientific. He's got his own documentary on Netflix called Ancient Civilizations, I think, off the top of my head. But it's just, he's going to prove the point there that there's people that lived back in the day, like I mean back thousands of years ago, 3,000 odd years. I think he makes a point in that documentary, that podcast, that they were a lot more advanced, and he says it right there. Like, you don't wake up one morning and decide to build these structures in a way where they're so aligned to true north and all the rest of it. So they were they had a very good understanding of astronomy and all the rest of it, and the attention to detail to go and make a structure that perfectly lines up with that suggests that they have been a lot more advanced in that way. And that goes to show, he does in his own documentary break it down in regards to the pyramids, and you'll all know about the pyramids now and all the sort of more stuff that's coming out about the pyramids and how they're aligned and all the rest of it. So there's a lot more stuff going on there, and even in that podcast he talks about the soil. The soil isn't rich for growing crops, so then how do you, like he was sort of suggesting there, the amount you would have needed a lot of people to, a lot of workforce to make them sort of things. So to have a big workforce, you're going to need to feed them and all the rest of it. They then had produced like a man-made soil which is very, very fertile, that you could place this soil into soil which isn't fertile and it just makes it fertile. And this is it's all scientifically proven, it's all factual there, it's all completely out there, and it's reputable scientists that are bringing this out. And the next thing we're going to jump into then is a snippet from the documentary itself, where it's an interview from both the indigenous people that were working there and the Colombian Special Forces. And the very interesting part, I want to pull this out, was they talked about, this is them talking about now the sort of other sort of forces at work they sort of felt that were there from two different sort of parties that weren't necessarily working on top of each other, but they were both experiencing it. And it's good to see it away from their own point of view. It's like when someone does something wrong, you bring both parties out, you separate them and listen to both their stories to see where they sort of match. So I thought this was very interesting, this part. So let's look at this video now.
Things happened out there. I mean, I don't know how to explain it yet.
At night, sometimes we felt like people were walking around the area, watching us. You could feel it in the air that something was going on out there that wasn't normal, you know?
We started our searches later, looking for the children at night. Strange things happened. The compass on the GPS started spinning around and around as if there was magnetism in every direction. Someone was out there. I was scared. We didn't know what was going on around us, who was out there with us.
Don Rubio told me that the duende was out to get the captain.
I am a practicing Catholic. I'm a firm believer that God exists. But there are supernatural things in life. I'm well aware of that. It's very clear.
So there you go. That to me, that really stuck out to me when I was watching this, and yeah, which will lead me on to another point we're going to make now. So that was the sort of the stuff that was happening within the jungle whenever they were just sort of going throughout this rescue operation, and it goes on, the operation. Now the operation, dubbed Operation Hope, it lasted 40 days, and the interesting fact about it was on the 36th day, it was the day where the Major General, let's call him that, had decided then that they weren't making enough progress. They were finding bits and pieces throughout the forest to suggest that the kids were in fact still alive, and this was what was giving them hope and faith and all the rest of it. Like different sort of nappies and signs that the children were trying to survive out there, and that's what led them to keep pushing on throughout the search. But as the documentary progresses, they get loads and loads away because there's different sort of twists and turns. They do eventually find the children, and it's on the day 36 the forces pull out because the Major General realizes his men's very fatigued. They spent a lot of time in there. All the sort of hazardness of the jungle were starting to take a toll. A lot of sickness hits the sort of everyone involved, and he pulls them out. The indigenous people decide to stay on, and they really do go through a process of praying and really starting to focus in on their spirituality, which is the part I'm going to talk about now, which then leads them to finding the children on day 40. And they have this kind of like spiritual experience, if that's the best way to explain it, where the leader of the indigenous ones, he goes through this process, and he then turns around on one of the days, I think it must be like day 38, 30, 39, and around that time saying, right, no, we're going to find them on this day at this time. The jungle has spoken, them kind of stuff, and go watch it and you'll find out. But that young guy who was talking there, the guy who was had no clothes on his top, he's one of the indigenous searchers, and it's actually him who finds the kids. And it's, remember what I'm saying about how they were trying to find him, as in they were acting randomly and moving randomly, so they weren't sort of on top of each other. He turns up to sort of look to see where his buddy is, and then he sees the children, and they're just stood there, and then that's where they're found. And that was on day 40. And then when they find the children, the documentary continues on, and they do bits and pieces where you don't physically see the children, as in have them sit down for an interview, because they're all under 18, so it's protecting their identities and all the rest of it, because they're adolescents as such. But they must have been investigators who obviously sat down with the oldest girl, the 13-year-old, and they speak with her, and then she gives her account. It's like just via voice on what happened in the jungle and what they were feeling like and how they went about this survival. It is mental, and you've got to think about the age of them. You have the 13-year-old, the 9-year-old, the 4-year-old, and now the 1-year-old, because she indeed, in fact, because she was 11 months old, she had her first birthday during this operation. But for me then, when I was watching this with my wife, I just like, this is crazy. But what stuck out to me, and I'm a man of faith, and I've spoke about this on my channel before, it's just that number 40 kind of stuck out to me. It's like, why did it happen for so long? On day 36, the Colombian Special Forces pull out, all the rest of it, and then the indigenous people stay on, but it's on day 40. And that kind of stuck out to me, because now I'm not an absolute professional in regards to the Bible, but it's just that number 40 stuck out to me, because it is quite, I thought in my mind, I've seen and heard of that number quite a lot throughout the Bible. So I decided to, because I can't just retract Bible from my brain, to jump onto the internet and for the purpose of this video, just to work out what is the significance of the number 40 within the Bible. I'm going to play a bit of a screen recording here, which I'm going to pop up now, which I jumped on to Google, as we all do whenever we're not invested. Can't pull everything off the top of our heads. We jumped into one of the largest search engines online. Yeah, so I typed in how significant is the number 40 within the Bible, and we see what it spits out. And look at that. In the Bible, the number 40 is highly significant, so it's very significant, generally representing a period of testing, trial, preparation, or transformation, often signifying a time of intense spiritual growth or transition before a major event occurs. Prominent examples include the 40 days of rain during Noah's flood, the 40 years of Israelites wandering in the desert, and Jesus' 40 days of fasting in the wilderness. Just completely spoke to me. And then that's just like, when you completely break it down, you sort of see, like, with all the tech, all the thing that was involved, it came down to, I believe, and this is just me, my own opinion watching this, you may have a totally more sort of grounded opinion on your own beliefs and whatnot from what happened here, but genuinely from looking at all this kind of stuff, where like that Graham Hancock thing in, where he talks about ancient civilizations there and having a greater knowledge of stuff, there is other parts of the Bible talks about days gone by, as in thousands of years ago, and all the rest of it. But it's just that 40th day where they're found, and you can just see it there. It's a period of testing, trial, and preparation. And people then would go to argue, well, then why would a kid at 11 months, old, require to be tested in such a way? And when you look at other aspects, and this is only me doing my sort of very infant knowledge of learning about the Bible, there's a lot of stuff happens. It's like if you drop a pebble into a lake, that the splash happens and it has a ripple effect. When you watch this documentary, you will see everyone who's involved, without me breaking down the whole documentary. There's some good people, there's some bad people within it, but everyone going through the process of looking for these children all experience some sort of closure or some sort of way in their own happenings in their own personal lives. And that's why I just thought that number just really popped out to me, and just everything that was going on in the documentary and all the different interviews, it was just quite, it was a very coincidence in that sort of matter. And that's just why I wanted to close it off there and bring it into my own conclusions in the very end of this. But yeah, that's just my own personal opinion. Please go away and watch it and come up with your own sort of analogy and analytics on how you've seen how it went. But let's not take it away from the kids itself. It was a crazy experience, and me watching it with my wife. Now I've got kids as well. I've got a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old. And like I was just sort of saying, like, imagine we were away on holiday or something, like we were away exploring the Amazon or one of these crazy holidays, and that had been us, and we had both perished in the plane. There's like no way my kids now, and that's not me giving the confidence in them, maybe I should have more confidence in them, but I just think definitely in Western culture and Western society, there's definitely no way our kids would have lasted that long, or would have had the resilience or even the sort of skill set to survive for that long, 40 days in the Amazon jungle on their own. All 4 kids are alive and well in Colombia. They're in the care system now. It's all talked about at the very end of the documentary, and they are doing well, so they've come through that. Now, indeed, they're probably potentially the girl, the 13-year-old girl, may have some other stuff to work through, because she did take a lot of the weight on her shoulders, being the eldest there and going through it and keeping all her brothers and sisters alive. But flip me, that family now, that bond between them kids is going to be unreal. And that is some really crazy experience to go through at such a young age. That was something very, very different there for a video. I would like to do more of these in the future, where we look at sort of stuff that we can sort of still connect to the sort of whole, the theme of this, the military. And the reason why I've connected this video to this sort of channel is the resilience aspect of it. Because I think that's a very big thing, key thing to surviving in modern day militaries, or indeed just life in general now, is resilience. You hear that word thrown about so much, that mental resilience, but this is a true display of resilience, and to such young people who are at the very start of their lives. Crazy. Thanks so much for joining me. If you are new here, welcome to Ranger Media. You will find all things like this and other topics regards to the military in and around this channel. I'm really glad that you've made it to this part of the video. If you have indeed done so, highly recommend you go away and check that sort of documentary out. Thanks so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you again on the next video. See you then.